Léon at the Olympic School, Volume 1, Palmaroux. Chapter 1. Léon Renarte woke to the grating sound of his watch alarm, a shrill noise that pierced the morning silence of his tiny room. He opened his eyes and stared at the yellowed ceiling, trying to fully awaken. He had to get up early to complete the household chores before his foster family woke up. It wasn't a task he enjoyed, but at 12 years old, he had long since resigned himself to it. As he got out of bed, Léon shivered at the touch of the cold floor under his bare feet. The silence was only broken by the faint hum of the faulty refrigerator and the sounds of plumbing from the adjacent bathroom. The apartment exuded a persistent smell of mold and mustiness, with each room bearing witness to the neglect of its occupants. He headed to the small kitchen, where a pile of dirty dishes from the previous day awaited him. As he plunged his hands into the icy water of the sink, he couldn't help but think of another life. A life where he wouldn't have to do such menial tasks. But he quickly pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the sound of the water and the clinking of plates that he cleaned methodically. After finishing the dishes, he swept the cluttered living room, filled with old magazines, half-empty boxes, and worn-out furniture. Léon's foster family was indifferent to his efforts, but he persisted, hoping that one day his hard work would be recognized elsewhere. That morning, however, an unexpected change was about to disrupt his monotonous routine. As he picked up the scattered newspapers near the door, he noticed a thick envelope among the day's mail. His name, written in neat letters, stood out on the cream-colored paper. Intrigued, he tore open the envelope and pulled out a letter on thick, refined paper. "Dear Léon Renarte, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected to receive a full scholarship to the Palmaroux International Olympic School of Sports. This opportunity will allow you to develop your athletic and personal skills in an environment dedicated to excellence. Please find enclosed the details of your admission and instructions for your arrival at our institution. Sincerely, Albert Dubois, Director of the Palmaroux International Olympic School of Sports." Léon reread the letter several times, his hands trembling with excitement and disbelief. This scholarship represented much more than a mere sporting opportunity. It was the promise of a new life, far from indifference and neglect. His heart pounded as he imagined the possibilities that lay ahead. His thoughts were interrupted by the gruff voice of his foster father, Jean, echoing from the living room. "Léon, where's my coffee?" Jean entered the kitchen, his face marked with irritation. Seeing the letter in Léon's hands, he frowned. "What do you have there?" Léon tried to hide his excitement, fearing Jean's reaction. He handed over the letter in silence. Jean read it quickly, his expression shifting from confusion to irritation. "A sports school? As if you'd succeed there. Anyway, who's going to do the chores here if you leave?" Léon felt a wave of disappointment wash over him, but he stood up straight, determined not to let Jean crush his hopes. "It's a chance for me. I'm going," he replied with rare confidence. Jean shrugged, clearly unimpressed. "Do what you want, but don't count on us to support you if you fail." Léon returned to his room, clutching the precious letter to his chest. He knew his decision was made, regardless of his foster family's opinion. He spent the day nervously preparing his things. His neighborhood friends, though sad to see him go, warmly encouraged him. When the day of departure arrived, Léon stood in front of the apartment door, a travel bag at his feet. He took one last look inside, taking a deep breath. Jean's indifferent voice echoed one last time from the living room. "Make sure you close the door on your way out." Léon left the apartment without looking back, his footsteps echoing in the narrow stairwell. The morning sun bathed the street in golden light as he headed toward the train station. For the first time in a long while, he felt free, buoyed by the hope of a promising future. The walk to the station was quiet. The streets were still deserted, and the only sound was that of his quick steps on the pavement. The admission letter to the school still burned in Léon's pocket as he walked through the neighborhood, looking for familiar faces to share the news. His heart pounded, torn between the excitement of a promising future and the fear of the unknown that awaited him. Léon stopped by Mrs. Dupont's, an old lady who ran a small bakery near the station. She had always had a soft spot for Léon, sometimes offering him sweets when he helped her. "Good morning, Mrs. Dupont," he said as he entered the narrow bakery, filled with the smells of coffee and fresh bread. The old lady looked up from her counter and smiled warmly at him. "Ah, Léon, my favorite boy. What brings you here?" Léon carefully took the letter from his pocket and handed it to Mrs. Dupont, his hands slightly trembling. She took it and adjusted her glasses before reading. As she read, her smile widened. "Well, what wonderful news! A scholarship to Palmaroux. You must be proud, Léon." Léon nodded, a shy smile lighting up his face. "Yes, ma'am. I'm really excited, but also a little nervous. It's a big change." Mrs. Dupont gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Big changes are often the most beautiful. You are a strong and smart boy. You will succeed, I'm sure. But promise me you'll come back to visit and tell me about your adventures." Léon promised, moved by Mrs. Dupont's kindness. After exchanging a few more words, he left the bakery, his heart a little lighter. He knew he would miss her support, but her comforting words echoed within him as a source of encouragement. When he arrived at the station, the sky was just beginning to lighten. Léon bought his ticket and sat on a bench, waiting for the train. As the boarding time approached, Léon felt a knot forming in his stomach. The train doors opened, and he got on, settling near a window. As the train slowly started, he took one last look at the station and the neighborhood he was leaving behind. During the journey, Léon let his mind wander. He imagined the vast sports fields of Palmaroux, the modern training rooms, and most of all, he hoped to find his place there, a real family. He wondered what kind of friends he would meet and whether his athletic skills would meet the expectations. A few hours later, the conductor's voice finally announced their arrival at the station. Léon took a deep breath and got off the train, his feet touching the ground of a new life. Before him stretched the path to Palmaroux, surrounded by impeccably maintained gardens and majestic trees. He followed the signs, his heart beating faster with each step. At the school entrance, he was greeted by a huge arch bearing the golden inscription, Palmaroux International Olympic School of Sports. He walked under the arch, entering a world that would transform his life. The buildings, though modern, exuded an aura of tradition and respect. Everywhere, students in uniform talked, laughed, and toured the campus. Léon couldn't help but feel a deep admiration for this place. He walked to a reception desk, where a smiling woman warmly greeted him. "Welcome to Palmaroux, Léon. I'm Mrs. Lefebvre, and I'll show you to your room and give you a tour of the school." Léon followed Mrs. Lefebvre, his eyes widening at each new discovery. The classrooms were equipped with the most advanced technology. The sports field stretched as far as the eye could see, and every corner of the school breathed excellence. Arriving at the dormitory, Léon thanked Mrs. Lefebvre and entered his new room. It was simple but comfortable, very different from what he was used to. Léon placed his bag on the bed and sat down, taking a moment to absorb everything he had experienced in one day. The day ended with dinner in the large dining hall. Léon sat at a table with other new students. The lively conversations filled the room, each sharing their hopes and fears. Léon listened more than he spoke, observing the future classmates with whom he would share this adventure. When the lights went out and silence enveloped the dormitory, Léon lay down, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in a long while, he felt a mix of excitement and inner peace. He was at Palmaroux, ready to embrace his destiny and prove he deserved this chance.